Yeah, we're super excited to have you on, just in general, because I think one of the things that's really important to us as a group, especially as a group of women, but overall as an organization, is really talking about women in hemp and kind of what women are doing in hemp and in the industry that's been so traditionally male dominated. So I'm excited to learn more about you. I've heard so much from the other team members that have met you. I'm excited to kind of learn more firsthand personally, and then also just to talk to you about kind of, you have such a broad knowledge of what's going on in hemp. So I'm excited to kind of dive into some more of the details of what's happening across the board.
Well, and I'm really excited to be here. So thank you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I apologize again for the technical difficulties and the reschedule. And we're going to have this conversation one way or another, but we've had a little bit of a problem getting here. So thanks for bearing with us.
Well, I'm especially excited to be talking with a group of women. So it's never felt more impactful or important. And so that's refreshing as well.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And I think, I really agree. And I think one of the things that I keep hearing with women across the board, especially in the last week, even more so, is how powerful it is when we come together as a group of women, really to talk about or work on anything, and kind of the special magic that happens there. It's a little bit different. And so I'm really excited that more and more women are getting involved in hemp and are wanting to talk about it as groups of women in hemp. And yeah, I think it's certainly time. So it's exciting that it's starting to kind of come more to the forefront now.
Yes.
I could not agree.
Awesome. Well, we have a couple questions that we were hoping just to learn a little bit more about you and your background. So maybe we can start there, but I would love for this to really just be a discussion with all of us, kind of jumping in and talking about the different topics that come to the, rise up in the conversation. And we also did some research on, about 10 women that are doing some cool things in the industry that we thought we could talk about and highlight possibly too. After we've, talked some more kind of about general things that are going on. So the first question we have, perfect. Yeah. So the first question we have here is about you, actually, Mandi. Would you mind just giving us a little bit more about your background and how you got into the hemp industry in the first place?
Sure. So yes, again, thank you guys very much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. And I do apologize, we didn't work out on the other channel, but I think that this is great. And I'm still very happy and thankful to be surrounded by great women, especially to highlight them in the industry. But I got started kind of by accident. I'm really, really passionate about connecting people and building relationships and helping, members or people generate revenue and build on the connection of the actual relationship. And prior to getting into the industry, I was hosting B2B networking events where I would do just that. We would host events or experiences with the goal of bringing people together and building relationship that then generated revenue. And so I was at a CannaBS event kind of by accident. I had been asked to come and help with an event, and it just happened to be a hemp and cannabis event. And so I was really taken back by the lack of connectivity within the event and the lack of awareness of what was happening, even a block away, and that the number of mistakes that were happening over and over again because of that. And so I really wanted to put together something that provided an opportunity for people to come together and build relationships and know when to outsource and when to bring things in and what seeds to use and what transportation and what worked and what didn't. And so that's how I got into it, really driving my passion around the people.
Incredible. I love that. And I think from my point of view personally, and I'd love to, hear Shakira and Ginger and, some of the other people on the call too. But I think that's exactly been my experience working with you and with you guys at Global Hemp. That seems to be exactly what you're doing, is making those connections that are really necessary for all of us to thrive as an industry together. Because without those connections, we're just going to be a bunch of little individual silos kind of trying to do the same thing certainly not as effective. So I love that. I think that's beautiful.
I definitely think that it lends to this trend we're seeing, or the shift to, less transaction based, business and more relationship focused, going back to people doing business with people they know and like or trust. And so, yeah,
absolutely. And I think especially as we're navigating this kind of current and post-pandemic world that's simultaneously happening, and so much has gone to remote, it's more and more and more important to do business with people you know and trust, because you're not necessarily in the same room with them as often as you might have been 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
So in terms of overall kind of in the industry, especially compared to some of the other industries that you worked in prior to getting into hemp, how do you feel it compares being a woman working in this industry kind of versus some of the previous industries you were in before?
This one's kind of tricky for me because I hadn't really faced complications being a woman in business until I got into the hemp industry. And I don't think that it's because it's the hemp industry. It's because I got into an industry that services large organizations or industries that are male dominant, like agriculture and construction and building materials, for example. And so they're male dominant and male led. And where previously, I still have worked in male dominant organizations, but not, I don't think that they're as, I think that they're more forward thinking than sometimes the construction. I don't know how to say that correctly. Maybe I'm not, because I don't know that forward thinking is the right word, but I think that you get what I'm trying to say, in the sense that
industries that like have more traditional inclusivity, maybe, or have more people that have already represented in the space and is not as much of a kind of a trailblaze. I think accurate, maybe?
I think that there's more movement, say in tech. I live in Salt Lake, where tech sales is very dominant, right? And so as I'm networking, a lot of people are running somewhere in the tech space where it's very progressive, where the construction and building industry is not as progressive when we're looking at, ways to change or advance. The time that it takes to move or progress, it seems like takes a little bit longer. It takes a lot longer. Agriculture, we get some people in agriculture that are out in the sticks that still don't have internet service, right? And so we look at progression there compared to living in the city in Salt Lake is very different. And yeah, remind me of the rest of your question. I apologize. I'm not sure I'm answering it correctly.
No, you definitely are. And it's absolutely fine. I was curious if you've had experiences that differed as a woman in hemp versus, some of the other industries.
Yeah. So I would say woman wise, I think that it's been extremely rewarding watching the collaboration in the hemp industry from the women. I feel like the women have really led the charge at what that looks like as we're entering an industrial revolution and butting up against opportunities for big revenue. You start to see the capitalistic mindset and, the want to take over the supply chain. And I see these women really working to collaborate and rise all tides, or raise the tides by rising all boats. And so I think that I have seen more in this industry and these verticals than I saw outside of the hemp industry. And I really think it's more because the industries were really trying to progress. Hemp is very forward thinking. It's very progressive right now. And we're trying to really push these other industries forward. And so collaboration has been a fabulous thing to watch in the hemp industry.
Beautiful. Yeah, I would absolutely agree with you. I think that's really, I come from a tech background myself, and it's been really surprising to me the level of, in a very pleasant and beautiful way, but the level of kind of collaboration and people willing to come together as a whole to move this forward, rather than some of the kind of competition and secrecy and kind of cutthroat tactics that you see sometimes in the tech sector.
I think in advanced industries, right? As like that there's a place for that. And I just don't, we can't if we're all working in our own silo and taking out for greed. I mean, greed is what got us here.
Yes. Great point.
Completely. Yeah, great point. And I think kind of to that point, you know, one of the things that we were hoping to talk about, we believe it's pretty important to see kind of diversity and inclusion across the board, especially like at C-suite level roles, for a number of different reasons. Because what, you know, happens in the boardroom affects so much kind of our daily life without us realizing. And so seeing more of that inclusion in like at the C-suite level and having it kind of permeate the strategy and the decisions and the supply chain and all of these things that kind of then trickle down to affect all of us, is one of the first steps. And I think, you know, that's one of the things that we're really passionate about at GÜDPHORIA is making sure we have as many women represented in leadership roles as we do across the board. And I would say from what I've seen in the hemp industry, that seems to be true in general. But I was wondering if you've seen that to be true kind of with the people that you've interacted with, and if you're starting to see more of a trend kind of in that direction of bringing women into those leadership roles in hemp, or women that are creating spaces on their own.
Yes, I still think, you know, we're in industries and working in verticals that are dominantly men led, or, you know, and I have to give a shout out to the men that support us also. You know, we've become who we are because they're standing behind us. And so I'm very passionate about, you know, I'm where I am and we as an organization are where we are because of our opportunity to be inclusive. And that includes, you know, them as well, but not just women, minorities in general. And so, yes, I do see a big shift, and I see it across the board, right? Our consumers are more concerned about who's running the business and how ethically sourced products are and how are they grown and made. And so I think that, yes, we're starting to see a shift, but I still think that we are working with industries like large manufacturing facilities or oil and gas, construction and building, big agriculture, that are kind of where that reservation came from me in the beginning, that they are big dominantly led organizations or industries that are ran by typically men. But yes, I do see the shift, and I do see that, I see that there's big benefit in both. I think that hemp provides opportunity. Hemp provides us a way to create a new supply chain, a new and better product, a new IP, the IP that we're going to start seeing come off of the raw material processing, right? Once we get growing and processing at scale, now we can really start inventing and scaling, you know, new products. And I think that that's where innovation for our younger generations come. And I think that that will really support the shift and really support, you know, women in leadership and minority women in leadership. And yeah.
Great point. Yeah, I'm personally very excited to see. It seems like every day there's another piece of news about kind of cool, innovative R&D uses for hemp and what can be done. And I am super here for it. I think, you know, kind of the technology and what's kind of coming out and emerging from this is a really exciting time to be a part of this. And I think that's one of the things we were hoping to talk about just as a group. And I'd love to get everyone to weigh in here. But just to talk about as women in the industry that are interacting kind of day to day with all of these different aspects, we all are aware that hemp can do so many things. You know, I mean, it's 25,000, 30,000 uses that we're just starting to barely crack the surface and uncover here. Right. And so I'd really love to hear everyone kind of weigh in on what they think, you know, is the most promising use of hemp, or the next, you know, the way we have to use it that's essential for us to be able to move forward as a species on the planet. Because there's so many different uses for it, I'd love to hear kind of everyone weigh in on what about hemp makes them excited and what use makes them excited. You know, whether or not it's from a female perspective, obviously all of us on the phone here being females in the industry have a little bit of a different take, different piece of it that interests us. So I'd love to hear, you know, everyone weigh in.
I don't know if somebody,
Oh, go ahead.
oh, please, you first. I was just gonna say somebody else first, please.
So one of my biggest gripes for as long as I can remember is just single use anything. It's litter, it's seeing trash on the side of the road, and just the fact that hemp can be a replacement for all of that that's biodegradable. That, you know, even if it's only just a little bit better than what's already out there, because I know a lot of bioplastics still have some component of plastic or a part that doesn't break down, but just the fact that it can really target all of those things that you see littering the side of the road. And it's just like almost like a breath of fresh air, where it's like you think plastic is going to be here for hundreds of years, and knowing that there is a future that seems like it's coming where that might not be like the future we have to deal with in a decade or 20 years. So that's my most exciting, like the one I'm looking most forward to, is just like a replacement for single use everything that actually biodegrades.
That's a great one. And for me, I would say plastic, replacing plastic, just kind of building on what you were saying, and all the different ways that plastic is used, from single use to clothing, right? Just kind of replacing every way imaginable that we use plastic with hemp is kind of like something I'm extremely passionate about and excited about seeing come to fruition, being a part of. Like, I just think it is long overdue, and we are littering and killing our planet. And there's things like this, you know, that we can do to just make a big difference. And so I'm excited about that.
I'll jump in next. I would say, you know, obviously the sustainability aspect of hemp in general is super exciting to me, but one of the things I've gotten a lot more interested over the past, I don't know, 6 months or so is hemp clothing and hemp sheets and all of the different ways that you can use hemp in textiles. It's, you know, a lot of these products are just superior to cotton, super soft and really comfortable and also sustainable. So I think that's a really interesting aspect of the business.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to say reforestation is probably the most important thing to me. The like you guys are saying with the plastics and single use and things like that, like toilet paper, like all of that, they're all stemming from products that could be used with hemp. And so reforestation and switching those out is just such an important thing. We need to let our forests grow, and hemp grows so fast, we can harvest it so many times. I think it's an awesome way to switch that out.
Good point. More trees for everyone.
Yes.
Our
Kind of
forests
funny.
need to breathe, they need to rest.
That's right. It's kind of funny that Ginger, when you first started, you talked about like the plastics. That was really my aha moment when I first started. It was this like awareness that I had as to when the plastic and manufacturing of single-use plastics took off is right when hemp died. Like when we were no longer allowed to use it. And it just lit a fire under me to say, like, wait a minute, we have had a solution this entire time to this problem that's staring all of us in the face. And none of us have done anything about it, or nobody was really talking about it. And so that was where what really like drove my passion to bring this to people. So that's funny that you say that. I'm actually really excited about graphene and our potential to impact batteries. And, you know, we talk about the sustainability aspect and what we can do for rural communities by growing. I said for a long time, this is making farming sexy again. So we can, you know, localize our supply chain. And I think that the impact that we have then for jobs that then is just a ripple effect becomes like very exciting. And I was so disconnected from that before I got into this. And so I look at like our ability to, you know, no longer compare cost based on that simple, you know, what we're paying, but, you know, cost means its entire life cycle. How does that impact everything? And yeah.
completely agree with you. You took mine actually, so I'll throw another one in here. But for me, knowing more and more, and especially coming from a tech background, knowing how dependent we are on technology, and on the batteries that power that technology specifically, aside from, I mean, I think we're all pretty aware at this point with single-use plastics, you see them everywhere. You know I went to Thailand and they were literally just in the rivers, all on the sides of the road. Just there's an overwhelming amount. So I think we're all pretty aware at this point that like that is a major problem and we have had the solution. But yeah, the batteries really excite me as well, because I think trying to convert a lot of our technology that we're so dependent upon at this point to something that's more sustainable, more local, that can stay, be created in the community itself and used in the community, is exactly some of the pieces that we're missing. And I would say kind of along those same lines, the one that I'll throw out is gasoline. I think that's one of the only ones that we haven't talked about so far. But for the exact same reasons, I'm super excited with what's coming out and what can be done with electronic vehicles and solar and wind, and really kind of converting the way that we are using some of these natural resources currently. But what comes to mind for me is all of the hundreds of thousands of millions of cars that run on traditional gasoline that are essentially just going to be sitting unused on the planet if we're able to convert over to completely electronic vehicles. And so I think once I found out that hemp could be made into a fuel source that burns as clean, I mean, I think the last piece of information I saw about it was that it burns cleaner than table salt. That really excited me, because I think you can't tune into the news these days without someone talking about gasoline prices. And so kind of in the same way you were saying, Mandi, where, there's potentially been a solution here this entire time that could help fix this problem. That's really what fuels my passion about it, is knowing, we can slightly change the way that we're doing some of these things, and start to care for and provide for the planet in a way that will allow future generations to be here long after, my need to go buy a new SUV. So
we just need to get it in the hands of our children. They will change the world with it.
Absolutely. I could not agree.
Yeah, I
more.
think we have a few moms on the call that could vouch for that firsthand, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, and like you were saying about like all the cars and stuff that could just be left stranded if we completely switch to EV, like having a hemp fuel or some like an alternative like that would help, so that we can keep those on the road and have them mixed with EV and not just have wasted vehicles.
100%. And the crazy part is you can mix this with the existing fuels or run it on the existing engines instead of, like you said, reinventing the wheel. I'm very kind of have an opinion about the whole electric vehicle thing. What do we do with the batteries? I don't feel like
Right.
putting a band-aid on this problem instead of really addressing it head on. And so I feel like our ability to grow a natural fuel is a much more viable and sustainable answer.
Yeah.
And it also says that they'll recycle their batteries up to 3 times, I think, but everything's also just so new. So not exactly sure like the long term will look like when it comes to batteries and storage and stuff.
Right. Something else I don't think that we have talked very much about that's really exciting for me is the protein aspect, the food aspect of hemp.
Yeah.
It is the most digestible protein, and we're receiving the most omega fatty acids and protein because of how digestible it is. And it's being used in baby formula and, women's hygiene products, which we're seeing a very big impact. It's starting to really hit us in the face at the lack of formula available on the counters. And I think that piece is really being overlooked, or had been overlooked in the United States, that I think we'll start to see a major production, as we really bring grain on board.
Yeah, I think you're right. We touched that subject a little bit a couple weeks back on one of our Twitter spaces, just because of a couple of myself and another I'm not sure. We have a couple people on the team who are parents, myself included. And so it really struck a chord with us specifically, you know, just the desperation that you're seeing around the country for people who are running out of formula and don't have a way to feed their child, and knowing that there's an alternative is, it's a lot to try to process, you know, and just try to share the information with people, I think is a great start and is extremely important.
Yes.
Yeah, I think not just shamelessly self-promote, but I'm pretty sure that we have a blog out that talks and kind of breaks down all of the specifics of kind of the perfection of hemp from a scientific food point of view. So if there's more details that anybody that's listening to this wants to go get, we have a blog that kind of talks about why it's such a chemically perfect amino acid balanced food, and what that means when you consume it. And I think that I can't imagine, I'm not a mother, but I can't imagine how terrifying knowing that I may not be able to feed my baby because there's a shortage of food. And so when I heard, oh my God, you can use hemp and turn it into a food source for babies similar to formula, it blew my mind a couple of weeks ago. And so thank you for bringing that up, because I think that's a super valid point. That's a very real issue that many people are facing currently. And it's a solution that's readily available, you know, at the grocery store that can be, can help in the short term. So
it cannot be sold in the United States yet. It is not available in the United States, which is crazy. It's manufactured here and it can be sold overseas, but not in the US yet, which is
not in the US.
Mind-boggling. Yeah, because
it is mind-blowing. And I think, Marissa, you mentioned you were making your own, correct?
I know I mentioned that. I'm not sure if Marissa.
Sorry, that was you, Shakira. That's right. Mentioned that you were making your own at home, which I think is brilliant since you can't buy it here in the US yet. Yeah.
That's very, very, very cool. Yes, I think it's brilliant. I tell everybody, hemp seeds. And I love CBD and I love that aspect of this business, but the nutritional side is far more powerful, in my opinion, when we look at, you know, the seed and the omega fatty acids and protein and yes, the food shelter. Yes, fuel.
Absolutely. And I think kind of to your other point about, you know, female cosmetic products, I don't know how many people saw this, but Revlon filed for, you know, bankruptcy protection about 2 weeks ago. And I think it's a supply, from what I've heard in the news, I haven't looked super deeply into it, but it's a supply chain issue in terms of being able to get product for the makeup. And it's interesting because when we're talking about solutions that already exist that we're not utilizing, I think, you know, yet again, we can turn to hemp, which can be readily used to swap out for the products that they're not able to get. And certainly Revlon's not the only one. I mean, it's across, you know, all cosmetics at this point that are starting to have some of those supply chain snags. So I think for me, it just blows my mind every time I start to sit and think about, oh my God, and hemp can solve this too, and it can solve this too, and it can solve this too, and it can solve this too. And I think that's when I start to get really, really excited to see how we in real time can start and are as an industry working on some of these issues that are causing huge kind of global disruptions.
Well, and there's no feminine products on the shelf right now, right? We have members, I have 2 or 3 members that are producing and manufacturing feminine products from hemp that are significantly better life cycle analysis and, you know, proving better internally for women.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, we had, sorry, that broke up for me a little, Shakira. What'd you say?
I was just saying, they're a lot less toxic.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think we even had someone on our list that we wanted to highlight today who's doing some really cool stuff specifically with feminine products, because exactly that's, you know, it's formula, it's feminine products, it's, you know, it's makeup, it's everything is running into those global supply chain snags right now. So, and I know for me personally, anytime I can get anything healthier, including, hemp sheets, hemp clothing, something that's going to be better for my body. I'm certainly interested, and I think feminine products and makeup that go directly on your skin are at the top of my list for sure. The less toxic that I can interact with products that I'm using every day, the better.
For sure. I know that was something that just, I think there was like a Forbes article recently that's saying like more and more people are really pushing to have these products available too. So now's the time. People want better options.
Absolutely. So I'd love to throw out one more question kind of to the group for each of us to kind of talk about and answer. And then maybe we can switch some of our focus over towards some of these women doing really cool stuff in hemp and just some general, books and podcasts and that sort of thing about hemp. So, but the kind of flip side question I had for everybody is, I know we've talked about what we think hemp's most promising uses individually and why we're all excited and passionate to be a part of this. But on the flip side, especially as women in the industry, I'd be interested to hear what each of you think is the biggest challenge or problem facing an industry here, either long-term or short-term. But what we have to come together to overcome in order to move forward with some of these cool things we just talked about.
I'll jump in first. So I guess the two things that come to mind for me are, one, I think there is sort of a history in this industry, especially on the cannabis side, of sort of a bro-y culture. I've been in, working with different companies in this space for 10 years, and I think it's getting a lot better. But from a female standpoint, that is something we probably need to overcome. And then I had another thing that was way more important. Oh, just, regulation and all the issues that are going on. I think there's constant confusion about where the laws are going, and, having an attorney around to constantly look at the changing laws and understand that. Hopefully we can get past some of that in the near future, but I think it's definitely a challenge, and, especially with the banking system and all of that. So those are my thoughts.
I second that bro community here in our industry, like good old boy network.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the thing that I feel like is one of the biggest obstacles as well is just a lack of awareness. I was at a regenerative farming conference last week, and the number, like a lot of people I talked to were like, so what does hemp do? People just don't know, even in the farming space. So I think just, getting the word out there and hopefully being able to give hemp a bigger platform will really open up some doors, and people can see how much it can do on a much larger scale.
Yeah. I'd say for me, I would say distinguishing the difference between hemp that is industrial and then the cannabis side, because it is still being lumped together. And I think that they are important distinctions to make because they do completely different things. So I think that is definitely something that will be in the favor of the industry to distinguish.
I agree, definitely. Just like clear information on what industrial is, what CBD is, the fact that hemp and the difference between THC, just lack of communication, and I think we just need more clarity, and then the stigma around it. The fact that hemp is still illegal or being pushed out of certain states and communities just kind of mind boggles me a little bit, because it's not psychoactive like THC. It has so many amazing uses. So I definitely think just working on stigma around the plant.
Jessica, what's your opinion?
Yeah, I agree. I think, a lot of it comes down to education and to the bro culture. Absolutely. And I think the more that we continue to come together as groups of women, like what we're doing today, to spread the word on the education and to come together to talk about how we as women in the industry can move things forward, it kind of helps with both of those issues, both with the bro culture and with the education. And I think, you know, all of us are so passionate. Everyone that I've interacted with that works with hemp is very passionate about hemp. And I think the more that we can continue to come together and spread that education, and Mandi, you guys are doing a great job. I know that's really your primary focus, and I want to, you know, really give you guys a shout out because you're doing a beautiful job getting that education and really the details and the nuances and the specifics that people don't understand. You guys are doing an amazing job getting that out there. So I certainly want to throw a shout out to you.
Thank you. I definitely think regulation is holding us up, you know, pretty heavy, both on the cannabinoid side. If the FDA would come in and put some regulations down, capital can come in. If we can separate the, you know, industrial crop, you know, not only are they being used for different things, but they're cultivated completely different and harvested completely different, you know, and when we're retting the crop in the field, all of the flower and leaves are rotting onto the field and staying in the field. But yet we're still running, you know, falling under this concern of THC, you know, being a 0.3 or hot crop and ruining the crop. And so, you know, farmers, until we mitigate that risk and remove that risk from our farmers, it's going to struggle to scale. And so I really think regulation or policy change around, you know, the testing to open up that market, it'll really change capital investment. We'll really start to see, you know, exponential growth when we do see more regulation or policy or standard development will help that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up because that is a huge, important piece that people are still trying to figure out actively. And I know in North Carolina, for example, I think the governor is literally signing the law into effect today that will allow the hemp industry to keep moving forward there in the way that they have been the past 5 years. So it's still like an active and daily struggle in a lot of places.
Yeah, literally.
And go ahead.
Oh no, that was just, I'm heated because I'm right next door to North Carolina and Virginia is going the other direction.
Yes, they are. I have been paying attention to that and they are rolling some things back right now. But I do think that some of these sensors and different things that are coming out on the market to help with some of that measurement, like you were talking about, Mandi, are really going to help move things forward. There's a lot that I've seen daily, just in terms of things that are being used in other type of agriculture that people are figuring out how to use it for hemp to help with that measurement, help with that testing, help with the transparency. Because I think the transparency is really what's going to help with the regulation and help to move things forward. So that gives me hope just a little bit to see that there are some new solutions coming out on the market at the same time people are trying to roll things back. There's new innovations that are showing up to help continue to push it forward.
I don't know if you guys are familiar. There's a group that have put together a hemp exemption. It's a bill that they're basically putting forward that would exempt fiber and grain from the THC or cannabinoid testing, which would also open that up. It puts it back to a visual test that if you're growing for fiber or grain, visually you should know what the crop is going towards as a Department of Agriculture, and then therefore, you know, the risk of the crop going hot is not even an issue. And so I'm hoping that, you know, things like that. And then as our certified seed programs develop, and certified seeds are not based only on the THC level, but also to include, you know, volume or quality of production, you know, we'll start to stabilize just like soy and corn and soybean.
I totally agree. And I think, you know, as we're talking about education, some of that education needs to happen within the industry itself. To your point, you know, there's completely different types of seeds that you grow for fiber than you do for CBD or for THC, and helping some of the people that are trying to regulate the industry understand that piece better, I think will also go a long way in helping to move this forward.
Yes.
Well, that seems like possibly a good, we're talking about education. And so that seems like maybe a good segue to talk about, I wanted to throw it out there. Are there any kind of books or podcasts that anyone that's on the call recommends? If you want to learn more about the hemp industry, besides, let me just start by saying Global Hemp Association, because you guys have a lot of great stuff across social media and on your YouTube specifically, more longer format pieces. But I wanted to open it up in terms of, in general, are there books, podcasts, any types of industries or organizations within the hemp industry itself that anyone on the phone would recommend for anyone that's listening when we play this back later on Discord?
I will jump in and say the book that opened my eyes to all of this is one of the oldest books around this, and that is the Jack Herrera book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes. I think if you haven't read it, you definitely should. Definitely helped to open my eyes to, you know, the prohibition of hemp and everything, and cannabis and everything that's happened since. That would be my rec.
I second that.
Great pick.
There's another new book out by Maren Krings. It's H is for Hemp, and it is actually printed on 100% hemp paper, and it's an encyclopedia style book, but she dives into all different parts of how hemp has impacted different cultures and the drug war and cultivation, agriculture. She's traveled to multiple countries and then reported about it. So that was a pretty good one. So
That's awesome.
Incredible. And that was called H's for Hemp, you said?
Yep. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Thank you.
I would contribute to that by saying a podcast that I like is Seed to CEO. They cover lots of different stories, insider information, like people in the industry. It's definitely a great one. It's usually about 40 minutes long. Great to like listen to en route or something like that if you want to catch up. But yeah, it's a great one.
Awesome. I'll jump in, and this isn't as specific to hemp, but one that was really helpful to kind of open my eyes just in general about climate change and soil and a lot of the things that interplay with hemp so seamlessly is Kiss the Ground. That's a documentary that came out in 2020, I believe, in the past couple of years. And they've got some education programs and some programs in general just about regenerative farming and the farm bill and that sort of thing that they're really trying to increase education. But I think when I watched that, that really helped me see the far-reaching impacts of soil health and how it affects us across the board.
That's also a good one. I don't know if I've told you guys this yet. It was something that kind of came up before I left last week. Taylor, who's our contact person at Soil Carbon, used to work for Kiss the Ground. She used to head their development team. So exciting things.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. And then I gotta say my favorite hemp books, Doug Fine. I think the one that I read most recently was called like Too High to Stop or Too High to Quit, maybe Too High to Fail. I just enjoy his writing style, and he knows so much.
He's incredible. Shout out to Doug Fine. He's incredible.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. Well, I know we compiled a list of some of the women that we admire in the industry that are doing some cool things, and some women in the industry that are doing some things. Well, I guess, you know, everybody's doing some cool things. So Shakira or Marissa, do you want to kind of kick us off and talking through some of the women that we're admiring in the industry and why? And then Mandi, I'd love to hear from you too. I know you've got a ton of connections, people that we may not have heard about, anyone that you want to highlight as well as it's coming up.
Yeah. Sure. Marissa, did you want to take that away, or would you like me to?
Well, I think one of the ones, well, there's two that really just stand out to me. I want to start with Chanel Lindsay. She created the
Mhm.
Nova,
Yeah.
and it's just such an amazing device. It's to teach more about dosage and like the medicinal. I think like being able to use something like that, her equipment, and be able to dose properly and know what your body needs and learn through that. I thought that was really cool.
Sure, yeah. So the Nova being the first medical cannabis device where you can control your dosing similar to like a pharmaceutical grade.
Yeah, because it like street stuff and not being able to even know what kind of dosage and stuff you're getting, or if you want to be able to grow at home and being able to use proper amounts for each thing, I think that's a great tool. It's more hands-on, it's taken us back, I think, more to like the herbal remedies, and I love that.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Shakira. Sorry.
I was just saying, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I think for me, as someone who is chronically ill and certainly has used a variety of CBD, THC, lots of uses of the hemp plant to help mitigate some of those symptoms. Having devices start to come out and live on the market that allow me as a user to have a little bit more control over the dosing is something that's super exciting. And I think there's a bunch of people in America and across the world that are using this plant specifically medicinally. And so having more control as an end user is never a bad thing. So I'm excited about that one. I think that one's pretty cool. And she owns Ardent, is that right? But the device itself is called Nova.
Yeah, the company is Ardent.
And then also
Awesome.
kind of more of a controversial, sorry. Martha Stewart. What do you guys think about her being in the cannabis industry?
I think it's great. I think that the partnership for marketing was
Amazing.
yeah, it gave, I mean, here it gives like very diverse cultures and very diverse people and multiple people, you know, at generations and generations have followed Martha Stewart and leaned
Mhm.
into what she does for a family and for a home. And now she's in the cannabis industry. It almost brought like this normalization, in my opinion, to the word and to what was happening, and, you know, and to show that like it runs in all aspects of life, or all across all demographics.
Exactly. And there is her history with going to prison and the controversial surrounding around that, but with such a following that she has of the masses, it's huge. And using her voice to kind of cover on cannabis, I think it does have a lot of positive ripples as well.
So I totally hear you from a marketing perspective, and I think her partnership with Snoop is obviously what really kicked this off. And you know, Mandi, what you said about it, you know, reaching different demographics, I fully agree. But from an equity standpoint, I think there is, for me, you know, a little bit of unease around the fact that, you know, she has a prison record, and for a long time, a lot of people with a prison record have been told that they can't get into the cannabis space again. And I know that's changing in a lot of states, but not everywhere yet. And so it kind of like rubbed me a little bit of the wrong way that it's like this wealthy white woman who can get into the space, but other people with records have not been able to.
That's a great point. You know, that's when we talk about inclusion and diversity. That's a great. Okay, let me ask you this. Do you think that it speaks to where the industry is going, that it is okay to be in? Or do you think that, I mean, obviously you brought up a good point, and where I saw it as like, this shows that we can, or we're going to, you know, open up that market or bring down that stigma, or allow the industry to, you know, allow people with felonies and with criminal charges to be in the industry. especially when they're with hemp or cannabis.
Sure, sure. I mean, I certainly hope that's the case, and I hope that's where it's going. I think obviously it's a state by state basis, and it's going to take longer to convince certain states. And maybe, you know, maybe it does, maybe she does help influence it in some way. I hope she does. But she just has a lot of privilege to be able to do that.
I agree with you, and I think that's a great point to bring up.
There is privilege,
Yeah,
but
and
she
I-
is still a woman in the industry, and I think that is amazing to go from kind of like a negative background and going what she went through, and then choosing to go down the route of cannabis and bringing more light to women. And it seems that her and Snoop do have an actual good relationship when it comes to that as well. So it doesn't really seem like it's just for face, but that's just from an outsider looking in.
Yeah, great points. And I really think it can be both. We're starting to see some movement in, places like New York State, where they're certainly doing the opposite, opening things up first if you have a felony conviction, rather than the traditional, for years and years and years, that's been absolutely a barrier of entry. And so I think that's an incredible point, Samantha, that on the one hand, it's frustrating to see people with a certain amount of wealth and privilege have doors opened for them that other people are not having open for them or have literally had slammed in their face for years and years. And then at the same time, because she has been such a lifestyle guru of telling people how to live their lives in a way to a certain level, she's really perfected that let me tell you how to live your best life type of brand, that her bringing cannabis into that does hugely help normalize and push it forward. So I think it's kind of both, which a lot of things are these days, nuanced and both. Like on the one hand, I love this part about it, and on the other hand, this part about it is super frustrating. And I think, that's exactly why she's controversial.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I definitely think it is a great thing. And then an exercise, of course, of privilege. But I think in this instance, though, maybe she used her privilege to kind of help push things forward in a way that a normal person, a normal woman may not have access, platform, ability to, for all those obvious reasons, being as though she went to jail and has a record, and just being, I guess, yeah.
It's hard. It's really difficult because we are kind of facing like both sides of the scale a lot. I know a couple of years ago when cannabis started getting really big again, I'm like, I've been, the pothead friend for quite a while now. And when it started, becoming widely accepted, all I could see are like, I think Gwyneth Paltrow had a cannabis line at some point, and I'm just like, people are literally in prison for this. I know people who've gone to prison for this. It's hard to see like the really shocking difference on both sides of the spectrum. And I think, it's just something, if you're getting into this industry, you have to be aware of it. You may be a lot luckier than many, many people. And what you can really do is, hopefully use your voice to speak for those people. Cannabis is really great, but it's been used against so many. And it's just important to acknowledge that. I think is probably the place to start.
For sure. And I'm hopeful that as the industry continues to grow, there'll be additional companies that go out of their way to hire people that have been negatively affected, people within the industry. I've, talked to a number of people that's an important component and piece for them, that they're able to certainly help in a small way, albeit, but help right some of the injustices that have happened by providing opportunities specifically for people that have been negatively affected in the past.
And that's really just like the best way to move forward anyways. You know, this is something that should be for everyone. Yeah, I guess that kind of just goes back to awareness. You know, there's a lot to be aware of here.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah,
let me transition us one more time, if you guys don't mind, just because I know one of the things we touched on, but we didn't go deep on, and I'd love to spend kind of our last couple minutes talking about, is specifically about feminine products on the market. There's a massive shortage right now. It's something that affects huge population of, in general, I mean, half the population. But I know that we are aware of a couple of people in the industry that are starting to produce hemp alternatives specifically. And Mandi, I know you mentioned that you've got a couple of members of Global Hemp that do as well. So I'd love to kind of shout out those people and highlight them, especially because right now it's impossible to find. And so any way that we can help get the word out for other people, you can find, yes, you can find this product and it's safer and it's not as toxic. I'm here to spread that word as much as I can. So I think the first person we had on our list, and Shakira, maybe I'll hand this over to you, but was Val Emanuel. And I'm not, is it Riff or is it RIF?
Yeah.
I'm not.
I believe it is Riff, but I could be wrong. Yeah. I believe that is what it is called. And that product line is, I'm not sure if you guys have heard of that, or Mandi, if you're familiar with it, but her focus is tampons and pads. It's a Black woman owned business, and she's trying to offer products for women that are, you know, obviously safer and free of toxins as a hemp alternative. And her products are not available yet. They are still, it's still in the Kickstarter phase. So you can't just go to your local store, unfortunately, you know, to your point earlier, Mandi, and just pick it up and get that. You would have to support the project currently on their Kickstarter page, which I can give you guys. It is under Riff Hemp Fiber products. And I believe if you put that in the search bar, you should be able to find it, or under Riff Women, RIF Women, on the Kickstarter platform.
Awesome. Thank you, Shakira.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Honestly, it's so crazy because for years and years, I just used these products and I never once questioned what they were made out of. And I'm going to be honest, I had a horrible time. I did end up switching to a Diva Cup. But I finally saw an article, probably reading about hemp products, and I was just like, yikes. They're made of plastic. They don't even degrade. You know, here I am thinking oh, it's probably just cotton. Nope. Yeah, you use that tampon once and it just lasts forever. Kind of.
Yep.
Yeah, when you think about the chemicals and the dyes and the perfumes, especially if it's unscented, because then there's a scent to cover up the original scent, so it's double scented. It's a lot that I know I never considered as a woman until a couple of years ago, either, in terms of, oh, this is something that is directly, I'm intaking whatever's in this product as I use it. Is there an alternative that is safer for me? And I'm so excited to hear that there are, you know, some that are coming out on the market, especially made out of hemp, but in general, safe alternatives.
And I'm pretty sure tampons were invented by men. So having women take the lead on that and actually knowing about our bodies and creating products that are good for us, I love to see that.
Exactly. Yeah. Because how can they know? How can they know?
Exactly.
Yeah, for far too long, we've been subjected to men kind of telling us what what we should use, what is the right thing. And now it's the time, if any time, now is the time to take control, like you were saying, of our bodies, of our future, all the things that are relevant to us, and just create the things that are not going to be terrible or create, additional toxins in our bodies as we're just trying to live our lives.
Exactly, because we have our pH balance, there's cervical cancer risk and things like that with kind of like more of the traditional ones we've had in the past.
Yeah.
So it's good to hear of hemp and organic cotton and removing the fragrances and stuff.
It's wild. Even like toxic shock syndrome. I mean, tampons have like caution warnings on them.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really surprised to find out when I switched past them, my cups don't have those same warnings because they're not trapping bacteria inside them.
Yep.
It's like, wow, I really had no clue.
Yeah, and think about that, like in such a centralized location that's so sensitive, just constantly absorbing those toxins. Because that's what we knew. That's what we were accustomed to.
Yeah.
I've got from Global Hemp Association, we've got a ton of contacts. I was just sitting here kind of making a list of like, man, who are some of the people that are really leading the way? And so I just kind of picked some diverse contacts. I'll just throw some names out there. I mentioned Maren Krings with the book, Franny Tracy. She's got Franny's Farmacy. They are all women-owned franchises. That one's pretty cool. Kristen Yoder, she's got a cannabis, so it's CannaBS Detector. She's got a podcast and has been in the industry for a really long time. And she actually speaks up a lot about addiction in the industry, which is really like a interesting topic, but she's great. Claire Crunk, she's got Trace Fem Care, women's tampons. And then Carla Boyd has an organic, it's like non-GMO, organic, vegan, gluten-free alternative to beef, and hemp is the third ingredient, or to patties, like a meat substitute, which is pretty cool. And then Morgan Tweet is the COO for IND Hemp. They're a huge manufacturer, processor up in Montana. And then Gina Ingalls has a block manufacturing facility, another powerful woman. She's actually, I believe she's up in Oregon now. She was in Tennessee. And then Melissa Baldwin is running a processing facility in South Dakota. And then three more. I'm sorry, I could go on, and then I'll stop after this. And for anybody that I forgot,
please.
I mean, I could keep going. But Danielle Varga, Dr. Varga, and Dr. Heather Grab from Cornell University are both heavily involved in the cannabis and hemp industry. Dr. Varga from Daniela she came from Colorado and was heavily studying genomes and the genetics of cannabis, and now is over a program. She's over at Cornell. But anyways, both very involved in the hemp industry and leading on the research side, which is really, really cool, involved in the science. And then Jamie Campbell at Midwest Hemp Association. And then Zoe Levin is Bim Bam Boom toilet paper. And she's moving from bamboo to hemp toilet paper.
So,
okay.
Cool. I didn't know about that. No, I love that. Thank you. Yeah, I think the more people we can shout out with their products, the better. And I think we had a couple of those on our list too. So beautiful. I'm so glad you were able to run those down. And I did not realize that they were switching from bamboo to hemp toilet paper. That's very exciting.
Or maybe not switching entirely, right? But yeah,
sure.
Great opportunity, great call. Well, it's just so exciting. Like this kind of goes back to speak to this transition we're seeing. Like, look at all the women doing this. It's not, we're at the forefront and the women are leading this, and at an organizational level also, which is pretty dang cool. So shout out to all of you ladies as well.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think we're excited as a group to continue to see the industry move forward and continue to see women come to the forefront and provide solutions for all of us, not just for other women, but for everyone that can help provide, a safer, less toxic way to live that helps sustain the planet, I think is the goal for all of us here. But it's exciting to see how many women are really breaking in and help to break apart that bro culture that's existed. Because the more diverse and inclusive the industry is itself, the more we'll all move together better and quicker in a way. I think that's going to benefit all of us instead of just one one portion.
Mhm.
So thank you so much for joining us today, Mandi. It was great, super educational. I'm really excited to kind of go through the list of ladies you mentioned there at the end and start to see what some of them are doing and how I might be able to use some of the products in my own life day to day. But just to see what other women are doing in the industry is always really exciting. So thank you so much for coming on and joining us today and talking to us about kind of the overall state of women in hemp.